Thanks for coming. Now, we're not going to delay you too long this evening, but we have a few speakers, and as I say, we won't delay you too long, but we do want to put on record our absolute opposition to the absolutely shameful and savage budget introduced by the government just before Christmas, and which you all felt in your pockets last week and the week before, in your social welfare payments and in your wages, deductions in the universal social charge and the increase in tax and the reductions in your social welfare payments, job seekers, carers and a whole host of other payments. So without any further ado, we have three speakers. I'll say a few words myself in a few minutes, but the first one we have Paddy Healy, who's a former president of the Teachers Union of Ireland and just retired recently as senior lecturer in Dublin Institute of Technology. He's standing in the ceiling for Edward Conlon, who's been unable to come down. Paddy will say a few words, and then we have Breda Fell. Breda's from Waterford. She's been associated with us for a long number of years, member of the Unite Union, trade union activist, rank and file member, and Breda will say a few words as well. She's a community worker and she knows on the ground the difficulties that ordinary people have as a result of this absolutely savage budget. So, as I say, without any further ado, I'll ask Paddy to say a few words. Thank you very much.
Statistics came out about 2 months ago for the year 2009 from the OECD, the main economic body in the world. And the statistics said in 2009, in the middle of the recession, that Ireland was the second wealthiest country per head in the world. Now, isn't that hard to believe, given all this awful budget and the awful misery that's been created? But it's true. In fact, it's a little better than true, because the country above us is Luxembourg. That's only above us because half the people who work there don't live in it at all. So in fact, Ireland per head of population is the richest country in the world per head of population. Right? And now you all heard the country is broke, right? Now, there's another statistic as well came out. It's in the ICTU submission on the budget, and it says that Ireland has one of the worst distribution of wealth in the world, right? So what's the point about the two statistics? A very small percentage of people at the top have it all, and the state of the majority of the population is very, very bad and getting worse due to these awful budgets. Now, another fact that came out, there's 3,000 people in Ireland, right? And they have an income annually, every year, of €3 billion. And guess what happened to them in the budget? They got another 72 million into their pockets because the way this universal social charge works. The whole thing about Ireland is that ordinary people, whether it's through VAT, PAYE or whatever, water charges and so on, are paying it all, and the other crowd, 10% of the population, are getting all the money. Now that's the way it was during the boom, and that's the way it is again during the recession. How much assets have this top 3,000 people? They have 250 billion in assets, and they didn't take one penny off them in the budget, not a sausage. And you know, they said they let the old age pension alone. The other pensions were all cut, and even occupational pensions were cut, whether they were from the private sector occupational pension, and there were direct cuts in the public sector pensions. Now, I run an organisation, an informal organisation, trying to force unions to look after and stand up for public servants. Now, you've probably heard in the papers that all these public servants have 250 grand salaries and huge pensions and so on. But of course the facts are that the majority of public servants have less than the average industrial wage. And in the budget, the pensions of very low paid public servants on 15,000 a year, that's 300 euros a week. Their pensions was directly cut, and even people with occupational pensions in the private sector were cut. The other thing that happened was, one of the heads of Allied Irish Bank, he's on a pension of 529,000 a year, right? This is one of the banks that wrecked the country. 529,000 a year. And he got in the budget an extra 16 grand into his pocket because of the way this disgraceful universal social charge is operating. So some people are trying to drive a wedge between people working in the private sector and people working in the public sector. You all know who the public sector workers are. The people who work for the corporation, the county council, the nurses, the teachers, the guards, the ward staff, right? As I say, the vast majority of public servants have less than the average industrial, most of them anyway, a big percentage of them have less than the average industrial wage. And what we need is an alliance to fight together to take out this government and to defend ourselves and make the unions that we're paying dues to defend us, because they're not doing it. I won't go on any further. It's a great privilege to speak here in my hometown, and I hope I'll be down to give Seamus a hand. I'll be over here in the
Thanks very much, Penny. I'm going to introduce now, as I said, Breda Fell. Breda is a community worker. She's from Waterford, a member of, rank and file member of the Unite Union, and as I said, she knows firsthand how this budget affects ordinary people, ordinary families on the ground. So without further ado, Breda Fell will say a few words. Thanks.
Thanks, Seamus, and thanks for inviting me here today. I am from Waterford, I'm working in Waterford, but I had a long association, as Seamus said, with the Unemployed and Action Group here in Clonmel, and I've always admired the work that they do on the ground, and I've tried to encourage that to be happening in other places. As the two speakers have said, you know, we've had an economic disaster, we've had a social disaster. It's affected every part of our lives. We've lost jobs, we've lost a huge amount of jobs. Young people, what future have they got? I work in a community, I work in communities where we have the most exploited and disadvantaged people. The supports for those people are now being savagely attacked. We've only seen the beginning of the attacks. I, as a worker, don't know where my wages is going to come from in the next year or 2 years. And the work I do, obviously, will suffer, and the people who work with us. I am very angry about that. I'm very angry about the work that I've committed myself to. I'm hugely angry that this government and the developers and banks have done that to ordinary people like you and me. It's not good enough, but we're not going to concentrate on defeat. We have to encourage people like you and me to believe that we have a change. We need to change that system that makes us pay for their greed. We always pay the price. I'm not willing to take that anymore. I want to encourage people to claim our future. We have to claim a different future from now on. We can't continue with that system that doesn't serve us as working people. The future must be for young people. It must be to create a system that works for working people and not just the banks and the wealthy. We can do that. We can say now we want a different future. The future starts with us getting together here and discussing and deciding on what future that we want. We can do that. And I'm delighted that the party in Seamus is actually getting on the ground and talking to people and giving them advice on what future that we need. We need a future that provides jobs for us, for young people, at decent wages. We need a system that provides houses at affordable rates. We need good, reasonable incomes. We need pensions. We need to create a society that is equal for everyone and not just for the rich. I would say this is our opportunity now today to claim that future. The election provides us with some part of making that change. We need to elect people that will work for us, who will represent us, our interests, and will create those jobs and change the system that's there. So that's the message that I would be encouraging out there. Let's claim our future from today. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Breda. Just to say a few words as well, and before I start, just say a word of thanks. First of all to you all for turning out, of course, but in particular to Ken and Elko and Liam Doherty and Ross. And we'll have a few more tunes when we wrap up this part of the meeting. But I wanted to say this. Super rich bankers, Irish bankers, German bankers, French bankers, developers and their crony politicians have absolutely destroyed the country. They have created a recession, and now they want you and I, social welfare recipients, low and middle income families, students and young people to pay for that recession. These bankers gambled and they lost, but they still want to be paid. Now, two figures was in the paper during the week. How much are we paying them? This year, in 2011, we have to pay these bankers 4.8 billion euros. But it gets worse. It gets worse because by 2014, we're going to be paying them 10 billion euros. More than twice what we're paying them this year. And that's what the future is all about. Absolutely fleecing us, not just today, not just in this budget, but for the next 4 or 5 years. Paying back bankers who gambled and lost and now want an each way bet on their losses. They want to win when they win and they want to win when they lose. And they want to make us ordinary people pay for the monies that they gambled recklessly with and lost. And this budget is a result of that. It's about paying back those bankers. It's about paying back the international bankers and the super rich who have created a huge recession. And people like yourselves who have had no hand, act or part in creating that recession are now being forced to pay for the recession. And what happened in the budget? Who took the hit in the budget? About 90%, if not more, of the people in this country took the hit in the budget. And there are people like low-income families, as I said, like middle-income families, like carers, people who provide 7-day-a-week, 24-hour service to elderly people and to ill people, and who get a pittance for it, and who save the country hundreds of millions of euros every year. They're the people who are being hit. They were cut this year and they were cut again last year. And as I said, not only the carers, but blind pensioners, for instance, have been cut. Sick people have been cut. Yet, not a single halfpenny was taken from very wealthy people. As Paddy said, about 5% of the super rich population of this country own 40% of the wealth and have 250 billion euros in assets. But were they taxed? Did they pay more tax? No. No wealth tax. Now there's a wealth tax in most European countries. There's a wealth tax in many of the states in the United States. But in Ireland, the super rich, who still have 250 billion euros in assets, pay no wealth tax. They pay no assets tax. And as Paddy said, what did this budget do for them? It first of all didn't tax them. Secondly, it gave them back money. Gave them back, as Paddy said, 72 million euros. And if you read the papers last week, the developers who are part and parcel of creating this recession, what's going to happen to them? We're being told in the media that, they've lost money and all that, but they still have 250 billion euros of assets. And by the way, last Sunday it was reported in the papers that NAMA are now going to waive the debts of those developers. I didn't hear anybody talking about waiving the mortgages of hard-pressed couples who are paying over the odds for mortgages and who are in negative equity. But it appears that the people who created the recession, who still have loads of money, are not going to pay a halfpenny tax to sort out this recession. Now, the other big thing that the budget has done is it has taken 6 billion euros out of circulation. And the previous budgets, last two budgets, have taken out 8 billion euros out of the economy. And what does that do? That drives the recession deeper. It creates more unemployment. It means more small shops, more retail outlets are going to close, more jobs are going to be lost, we're going to have more immigration. And in fact, 60,000 people have already left these shores because of the recession and because of the way the money has been taken out of the economy. We need money put into the economy, we need a stimulus so as jobs can be created, and if you do that, then money can be saved on social welfare payments and can be put back into the exchequer by way of tax and social welfare payments that people at work make. The other thing I want to say, and I don't want to go on too long today because I know it's cold, but the fact of the matter is that there's a lot of hidden things in this budget, and I just say a few words about one of them that's just come to my notice during the week. And this is the way that students are going to be hit. Now we all heard and know that the student charge is going to go up from 1,500 to 2,000 euros, in addition to 500 euros, and there's going to be a 4% cut in the grants. But by the way as well, and this hasn't been announced, I haven't seen it anywhere except in the documentation that's just come out for grants for this coming year. The payment of grants on what they call the adjacent and non-adjacent rate has been changed. If you were living more than 15 miles from the third level institution that you're attending, you got what they call the non-adjacent rate, and it was about 3,100 euros. They've now changed that, and now you have to be living more than 28 miles from the institution. And if you're living less than 28 miles from the institution, you're going to be paid what they call the adjacent rate, which is about 1,300 euros. People are going to lose about 1,800 euros on that aspect of it alone, on top of the 4% reduction in the grant, and on top of the 500 euros of a charge. And by the way, if you're a mature student attending the TIP Institute here in Clonmel or in Thurles, you got the higher rate. That's going to be changed now from the 1st of September, and all mature students will only be getting the non-adjacent rate. They're going to lose 1,870 euros a year. So they're the kind of hidden cuts that are in this budget. Unfortunately, the current opposition parties have no alternative to this kind of budget. They've already effectively accepted the budgets. They've accepted this 3% deficit by 2014. Fine Gael have said they've accepted the 6 billion cuts. The Labour Party want 4.5 billion in cuts, and they say they won't reverse any of the cuts when they get into government. So they're no alternative. We need to have a voice for ordinary people in the next Dáil. We need to ensure that there is someone there putting the alternative point of view, and I certainly hope that after this election that I will be there putting the alternative point of view for yourself. The alternative point of view for yourselves and for the people of South Tipperary. As I said, I won't go on any further, just to thank you all again for turning out. I'm delighted to see you all here. It's a very good turnout for a very bad day. We have, of course, done a number of other things in this Fight Back campaign on the budget. We've already distributed 20,000 leaflets to houses right across the county, in every town and village right across the county. We've had a lot of publicity for this budget campaign, and we have done a loudspeaking tour on Thursday afternoon, Friday, and again this morning throughout the constituency. And we're here this evening just to put the final touches to this campaign and to thank you for coming and to ask you for your full support in the coming election campaign.